A very good afternoon to all my dear students. Today is a very small topic just about pulse and arterial plethysmography. Last time, I think when you have already seen that apparatus where you see the pulse oximeter. Okay, so you had seen the form of the arterial wave. So we would just discuss in short about it. So today we would just see what is pulse, how the pulse is there, what is the normal arterial pulse tracing, what are the factors influencing, techniques, sites of pulse, and characters. All these things have been discussed in details on and off in many revision classes. So if time permits, we would just discuss fast. The most important topic for the day is the arterial pulse waveform. So why do we actually go for pulse assessment? What is the significance of pulse? Now, especially in case of emergencies, okay, if you want to assess a patient because who has met with an accident, the first thing what we look for is how is is the pulse present or not, and if it is present, what is the characteristics of that pulse? So first thing is it helps in diagnosis as well as classifying the patient, whether the hemodynamics of the patient is stable or not. If the pulse is of good volume, normal rate, fine, we still have time, no problem. But if the pulse is weak, if the patient is having tachycardia, slow, feeble pulse, then it is, of course, an emergency situation where you have to diagnose and give first aid or the emergency management drugs. Second is, once the diagnosis is confirmed, then we have to decide what is the plan of care. So we have to identify what are the goals and the outcomes. For example, if a patient has come with tachycardia, so the goal is to get his heart rate into normal. And then we have to also identify what is the cause of tachycardia and accordingly decide what is the treatment for the patient. If a patient, for example, an known case of arrhythmia has come to the OPD and you look on the prescription, he is already on heart blockers. Now, when you check his pulse, he is having bradycardia. So, now you have to decide whether you have to maintain the same dosage of the drug or you have to reduce the dose of the drug. So all these things are determined by this pulse assessment. Of course, taking into consideration the ECG also. And then it is not just checking pulse once. If a patient is admitted in the hospital, we do check again and again the vitals so that we know how the patient is responding to treatment. So along with diagnosis, even the prognosis, in the prognosis of the patient, pulse plays an important role. So, what is pulse? Pulse is defined as rhythmic expansion of the arterial wall due to transmission of the pressure waves along the walls of the arteries that are produced during each systole of the heart. This definition is a standard definition given in all the practical books. So, basically, whenever there is ejection of blood from the left ventricle into the aorta, so that volume of blood causes expansion of the artery. So that creates a pressure wave which is transmitted throughout the arterial system. So this is the whole principle of pulse wave. So remember, when there is systole means there is contraction of the left ventricle which causes ejection of blood into the aorta. So because of this sudden amount of blood entering into the aorta, there is an expansion, abrupt expansion of the aorta, which creates a pressure wave which is carried forward or transmitted throughout the whole arterial system. Now, what is this Wind-Kessel effect? Now, this can be a short note in your exam for 3 marks also or for 5 marks, but it is an important phenomena which is responsible for the forward flow of the blood within the arterial system. Now, as I have been talking again and again, that whenever there is systole, left ventricular systolic contraction, so what happens? The amount of blood is being ejected. Now, we have to create that much amount of, I mean, that level of pressure wave which has to be transmitted throughout the whole arterial system. So there has to be some dynamics working, dynamics coming into picture. So what happens is, as you know, aorta is an elastic artery, so which is quite capable of expanding to accommodate whatever stroke volume has been ejected into it. So I hope you know what is stroke volume, right? This is the amount of blood which is ejected during each systole. So with each contraction, how much amount of blood is been ejected, that much amount gets first accommodated within the elastic aorta because of its capacity to expand. So what is going to happen? Because so much amount of blood is being I mean, is entering into less amount of area. So what is so that this what our diastolic blood pressure would increase up to the systolic blood pressure. So now remember, this ejected blood has got some kinetic energy, and stretching of the blood vessel leads to potential energy. So this kinetic energy gets converted to potential energy. So when the diastole phase comes into picture, this there is recoiling, means once the artery stretches, it will again recoil. So whatever potential energy was stored within that stretched blood vessel gets converted into kinetic energy, so that the forward flow of the blood continues. So this is what is Wind-Kessel effect. It can be a short note, and it is one of the most commonest question asked during the vivas also. Like, can you explain the phenomena of forward flow of blood into the arterial system? So remember, the answer is Wind-Kessel effect. So this is what is the basis of pulse. So whatever impulse that was generated because of left ventricular ejection, it is transmitted down the aorta at a velocity of almost 20 times greater than the velocity of the ejected blood bolus. So that's why the characteristics of the arterial pulse changes as it travels from the aorta down to the peripheral artery. So, coming to the basis of pulse. Now, as the blood is flowing from the aorta to the peripheral artery, so there are many factors which determine the characteristics of this pulse wave. So, first is the caliber of the peripheral artery. So, whether I mean, that is what is the diameter of the peripheral artery. So, as you know, from the aorta towards your distal finger, the diameter of the artery goes on decreasing. Okay. Then elasticity as well as distensibility property. As you know, aorta has got more of elastic component in his arterial wall. So compared to rest of the arteries, aorta is more elastic in nature. When it comes to arterioles, they have more of muscular component because they have to perform the main role of contraction. They are the main site of offering peripheral resistance. Okay, so muscular component increases towards the arterioles. Okay, coming to next important thing which would determine is left ejection volume. So how the, I mean, to what amplitude that wave would form would be decided by the amount of blood which is entering into the aorta. So if the stroke volume is more, of course the amplitude of the pulse would be more, higher amplitude. If so, that is what happens in case of when you do exercise. When the stroke volume increases and when you try to assess the pulse at that time, you would feel that you have a high volume pulse. Whereas in case of shock, okay, so where the overall circulatory volume is reduced, so what is happening, the left ejection volume is also reducing. So at that time when you feel the pulse is quite thready and weak. So the amount of blood entering into the aorta, that is the stroke volume, also decides the characteristics of the pulse. Rate of ejection, of course, the rate at which the heart is contracting could decide your pulse rate. Normally, heart rate is equal to pulse rate. So in exam, please don't get confused. if somebody asks you what is heart rate and what is pulse rate, technically, logically, heart rate should be equal to pulse rate, unless and until there are some diseases which would cause this apex pulse deficit. Apex pulse deficit is a terminology which is given when the heart rate would be more than that of the pulse rate. Remember, pulse rate can never be more than heart rate. Heart rate can be more than pulse rate. Okay, now why this would happen? Why a difference would occur between a heart rate and a pulse rate? For example, if you are assessing the radial artery and there is a thrombus or embolus, okay, somewhere in the brachial artery. So of course, there is an obstruction to the flow of blood because of which you are not able to feel the pulse properly. So that can be a situation where you might feel that the pulse is not as appropriate as that of heart rate. Another thing would be arrhythmias. When you auscultate, you feel the heart rate is almost 200. But remember again, in arrhythmias, the heart is not ejecting, I mean, blood at that much appropriate pressure. So that level of pressure wave is not being generated, which could be transmitted towards the peripheral artery. So again, that condition could give rise to apex pulse deficit. And then the distance from aorta. So again, that would decide the characteristics of the waveform. So remember, so there are so many things on which this pulse is dependent. So again, I would like to revise, it is the caliber of the peripheral artery, then the elasticity of the artery. So aorta is more elastic, whereas arterioles have a more muscular component. Then the amount of blood being ejected, that is the stroke volume, rate at which the blood is being ejected, and the distance from the aorta. So this is what is a normal arterial pulse tracing. So I hope you all remember that uh, we had shown you this plethysmograph where we had tied a sensor on your finger with the help of a Velcro, and then we were seeing your arterial pulse tracing. So this is a very characteristic wave seen in peripheral arteries. Okay, now we would see how. So remember, so as I was telling you, that when the blood has been ejected into the aorta, the pressure increases from diastole to systole. So hence the pressure over here is 80. Okay, where over here it is 120. So considering that the systolic blood pressure is 120 and diastolic is 80, accordingly we have, I mean, uh, what we say, it's, these figures are been illustrated in the graph. In this graph, there is no zero. X-axis is the time phase, whereas Y-axis is the pressure one. So when you see here, diastolic is 80. So as the left ventricular blood, stroke volume is being ejected, there is a sudden rise in the pressure within the aorta. So at that point, the pressure will increase up to 20. So this phase is known as anaphrotic limb, this line, okay. So this will represent the phase where the blood is being ejected into the aorta. Now what happens? Then you see, as the systolic phase goes and the diastole enters inside, the wave starts falling. I mean, the pressure will start dropping and you have a dicrotic node. So this phase is known as systolic decline. Okay, this one. And then you have a dicrotic notch. If you look over here. So from this point till the dicrotic notch is the systole. Okay, from the dicrotic notch till the wave again reaches the diastolic blood pressure, you have the diastolic phase. So this is known as systolic decline, whereas this one is known as diastolic run. So the pulse difference, pulse pressure is a difference between systole and diastole. So if you look here, this difference, that is 120 minus 80 is equal to 40. So the pulse pressure is represented as 40 millimeters of mercury over here. Okay, so if you are expected to draw a diagram of a normal arterial pulse tracing, which you see in plethysmography, this is an ideal one. So coming to more. So again the same one. This is a diastole, this is a systole. Okay, so here you see is a dicrotic notch. So this is a point where the systole ends. Okay, this one. From this point to this point. And from dicrotic notch till the wave again touches the diastolic blood pressure is a diastolic phase. So this anacrotic limb or the upstroke, okay, this one is known as anacrotic limb, whereas this limb is known as dicrotic limb. Now in the dicrotic limb, you have the dicrotic notch. So the upstroke represents increase in pressure as the blood flows into the aorta. So that corresponds to your stroke volume, which leads to increase in the intra-aortic pressure. So the peak is your systolic blood pressure and the trough is your diastolic blood pressure. Next, in the systolic phase, means from this point to the dicrotic notch. What is happening? Initially there is a rapid sudden increase in the pressure, okay, to a peak, and then it is followed by a rapid decline. And then this phase begins with the opening of the aortic wall. As you know, unless and until the aortic wall opens, blood cannot enter into the aorta. So from the left ventricle to the aorta, the communicating is through the aortic wall. So as the blood gets ejected, we have to create a pressure wave strong enough to reach towards the periphery. That's why if there is a sudden increase in the pressure, only then that kind of pressure wave would be created, which would get transmitted towards the periphery. So this phase at this point would begin with the opening of the aortic wall, then there is ejection of blood till it reaches the peak. So this whole phase represents left ventricular ejection. Now next, now from the aorta, the blood will start going towards the peripheral circulation. That's why you see this fall in the pressure. Okay, and then this fall is very gradual. It is not so sudden because as you know the arteries divide more into multiple branches. So there is gradual decrease in this pressure. And what is this dicrotic notch or incisura? Incisura is present at the level of aorta, okay? Towards the peripheral artery, we label this area as dicrotic notch. And this dicrotic notch represents closure of the aortic wall. So as there is sudden closure of the aortic wall, there is a sharp, dip over here. Okay. So then we have the percussion wave or the tidal wave, this one. This one is the percussion wave or the tidal wave that represents the left ventricular ejection during the systole, and the dicrotic wave is this one. Okay, now when there is sudden closure of the aortic wall, there is some rebound of blood which occurs. So because of which you see after the dicrotic notch you have a small hump over here. So that represents rebounding of the blood against the closed aortic wall. And this dicrotic notch also represents, end of the ventricular systole. That's why I said from this point, that is from the beginning, this is a point where the aortic wall opens up. So this point, and this is the point where aortic wall closes. So this phase is represented as systole. And from this point to this point, it is diastole. Okay. So now you see at different sites, when you try to record the arterial pulse waveforms, there is a difference. Now, if you see towards the aorta, you see this percussion wave is quite smooth. Okay. And the dicrotic notch is quite sharp over here. And this rebounding wave is also, higher amplitude. But as you move towards the periphery, the characteristics of the wave changes. So as you move distally, what happens? The anacrotic limb becomes more steep, means the upstroke is becoming steeper. Look here, compare, this is at the aorta and this is towards the dorsalis pedis. Okay, so if you compare the anacrotic limb, it is becoming quite steep. Okay, if you see the difference, I mean the systolic blood pressure, it will go on increasing. Okay, from the point of aorta till here. If you see the mean arterial pressure, it remains relatively constant. Now, if you look at the position of the dichrotic notch, what is happening? It is becoming, tending to go down, means it is getting positioned at a lower position. Look here, it is at a higher point, whereas you go towards the periphery, it is at a lower position. And the dichrotic notch becomes more like a wave. It becomes a more, if you look at the pattern, it is more smoothened up. So, looking at the waveform also, you can decide or you can guess whether it is more proximal or whether it is more distal. So, when you had seen your arterial pulse waveform, it was like this. Okay, at the tip of the finger, when we had kept the sensor, the arterial waveform was typically like this. This you would get at the level of aorta. So at the distal, you see the anacrotic limb is more steeper. The wave is also, if you compare it with the aorta, which is more smooth, the wave that you have a proper tip over here, whereas you compare the dichrotic notch, excuse me, you have a classical notch over here, whereas you look here, it is not as sharp as that in the aorta. And the dichrotic notch is positioned at a lower level as compared to that of aorta. So these are the few differences which you would see in the arterial pulse waveforms at different sites. Now, again, let us revise what are the factors which would influence the pulse. Age. So as the age increases, pulse gradually decreases. Okay. So we had, in children, the heart rate is quite higher. Or the normal heart rate is from 120 to 140 in infantless up to 1 year of age. But as you grow old, in adults, we consider the normal heart rate to be 60 to 100. So when you check the pulse rate, see what is the age of that person, whether it is a small child or it is an old person or a young person. Don't jump into conclusions. Whenever you have to assess pulse, you have to take age into consideration. So this is what I was trying to say. When you see newborn, it ranges from 80 to 180. At the age of 10 years, as you gradually see, the heart rate is, the average heart rate goes on decreasing. Okay, so in a 1 year old, we consider 120 to be normal. Okay, average. In adults, we take average. Average means, I hope you are understanding. When we talk about range, it is from 60 to 100, which is normal. Average, we take it as 60. That is the midpoint of all the values. Okay, so if you are checking pulse rate of 1 year old baby, and if he has a heart rate of 120, don't worry, it is normal in that way. But if you are assessing heart rate in a 20-year-old, boy, okay, boy or adult, and you have a heart rate of 120, it is of course abnormal. Okay, so age should be considered whenever you have to comment on the pulse rate. When it comes to gender, there is no much variation. With activity, especially exercise, the pulse rate goes on increasing with the activity because of increase in the sympathetic discharge from the higher centers. Simple, in anticipation, the heart rate increases. The classical example I always give is the moment I say you are supposed to give the viva, automatically your heart rate would increase in anticipation. So, whenever there is increase in sympathetic discharges, it will remove the vagal, it will withdraw the vagal tone from the SA node and the heart rate would increase. So in exercise, the heart rate increases to meet the metabolic demands. Another thing you have to consider is fever. Okay, so for every 1 degree rise in temperature, 1 degree Celsius rise in temperature, the pulse rate increases by 10. So this is one thing you should remember. In fever, there would be tachycardia. Medications like digitalis adrenaline. So digitalis is a drug used for heart failure patients, okay, to reduce the heart rate. So this is a drug which has got negative inotropic effect. Okay, inotropic means, sorry, a chronotropic effect and positive inotropic effect. Inotropic is the property where which describes the force of contraction, whereas chronotropic, chrono number. So chronotropy means rate. So digitalis is a drug which is having positive inotropic effect and negative chronotropic effect. So of course, when you give you whenever you are assessing any patient, you have to see whether the person is on any medication or not, because that would avoid unnecessary confusion. So if a person is on digitalis, of course his heart rate would be on lesser side. Adrenaline. Adrenaline is a drug which has got positive inotropic effect as well as positive chronotropic effect. Means when you give this drug, both the heart rate as well as the force of contraction is going to increase. So medication is another thing you have to consider whenever you are assessing pulse. So taking proper history is very, very important. Hypovolemia, like I had described in case of circulatory shock. So, whenever there is hypovolemia, there would be compensatory tachycardia. Okay, so all these mechanisms you have been reading in the textbooks. Stress. Stress is another condition where which causes release of our medullary hormones, especially epinephrine, norepinephrine, okay, because of our sympathetic nervous system activation. And as you know, epinephrine and norepinephrine have got positive chronotropic effect on the SA node as well as the heart. That is going to increase your pulse rate. Positioning, sitting to standing, lying down. Now, this here is a role of baroreceptor mechanisms which come into picture. So when you are in lying position, and then you suddenly stand up, what is going to happen? There is going to be venous pooling of the blood. So the venous return towards the heart would increase, would decrease. So what is going to happen? That is, if the venous return reduces, then the end systolic, the end what we say, the end diastolic volume also reduces. So if the end diastolic volume reduces, then the force of contraction is going to reduce. So if the force of contraction reduces, less blood is going to get ejected into the aorta. So automatically the blood pressure is going to fall down. So remember the Frank-Starling's law. That comes into picture when there is change of blood pressure with respect to position. So whenever the amount of blood ejected into the circulation is reduced, what is going to happen? There is reduced stretching of the blood vessels. Those signals reach our medullary centers, and then the reflex mechanism, that is increase in the pulse, would occur. So all these things we have been talking again and again, and I was very impressed to see that you all have written in detail about the pulse in the practical exams. I don't know, technically, have you really written on your own or copied? But if that is a genuinely you have represented those answers, then I think you all don't need my help in the exams. Is it not? So, uh, th- this much is about the today's topic, arterial plethysmography. So, what you should remember is this waveform. Okay, so this is kept in the exam also, where you are supposed to identify that this is a percussion wave, this is a dichrotic notch, and this is a dichrotic wave. You have to give the reasons of this percussion wave, this dichrotic notch, and dichrotic wave. Okay, so Viva is the most important aspect of practical exams. We won't expect that the same type of pattern in your university exams. In the university exams, you have to open your mouth. So even if you're good at writing, you have to put them into words. So let your Broca's area come into picture in your vivas, because even if your Wernicke's area is functioning well, if your Broca's area doesn't come into picture in your viva, it will be a big problem. So everybody has written all the answers very nicely, no problem. But in the exam, when the questions are asked, you have to speak. If you don't speak, you are not going to get marks. Okay, assessment of pulse is a very, very important thing. I mean, examination of pulse and examination of blood pressure. These are the basics which are expected, and if you do not perform well, that will really hamper your performance in the exam. So please, 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 examination of pulse does not require any apparatus. It is just your three fingers. Okay. So please try to examine the pulse and try to look for the characteristics, that is your rate, how much it is. Try to count the heart rate for 1 minute. In the exam, especially, no shortcuts, that is 15 seconds or 30 seconds, and then the multiplication factor. So you have to assess pulse, that is rate. Then comes the volume. How much is the volume of the pulse? Whether you feel the uplift and then the wave goes off that way. So that is what is the characteristics of the pulse. Then how much is the force? So oblitering. So the proximal finger, with the help of the proximal finger, you have to obliterate the flow. So how much pressure is required? That determines how much is the force. Volume, then tension. Tension, it corresponds to diastolic pressure, and it is a bit difficult because you have to feel for the pulse in between two pulses. So I usually don't expect at your level. Yes, next important is condition of the vessel wall. So when you assess the condition of the vessel wall, proximal finger at its place, and oh god, that's right here. I don't know how I can show you over here. So if the proximal finger, you have to keep it over here, and then with the help of the middle finger, you have to uh, you have to milk it, and then you have to milk it like this and keep it over here. Okay, and then you have after milking means you are emptying the blood vessel, and then you feel for the condition of the vessel wall. So in the young, you might not be able to feel, no problem. That is a normal thing because the arteries are soft and elastic. The artery is usually non-palpable. But in the exam, if I keep a old person over there, you cannot write the artery is not palpable. Especially if atherosclerosis is there. Okay, so what is going to happen? You will feel a cord-like structure in spite of milking. So especially if you have grandparents at home, please try to palpate their arteries and look for the condition of the vessel wall. There is a lot of difference. So condition of the vessel wall, try to feel in your grandparents. You will feel a cord-like structure. And why this occurs is because of atherosclerosis. Okay, so all these things you have to write in the exam. So just assessing the rate is not important. And then what are the difference? And at the same point, you should look for the bilateral palpation. So simultaneously, you'll be feeling for the radial arteries on both the forearm. So remember, technically, artery is always felt against a bone, okay, or a hard surface. So we expect the hard surface to be the bone in the body. So you have to remember against what you are feeling, the artery. So after bilateral palpation, whether there is any problem, especially in cases of peripheral vascular diseases, you would you would try to you might figure some variation in the pulse characteristics. Okay, normally you would feel everything same. Next is palpation of peripheral pulses. So here you have to remember sites right from top to bottom. So on the face we have the superior temporal artery, then the facial artery. The most important is carotid. Now remember, in carotid we do not look for pulsations together. because that can reduce the cerebral blood flow and can cause syncope in the patient. So you have to take care that carotids you are not feeling bilaterally at the same point. Rest all you can do it except carotid. After carotid over here, you have the subclavian vein. Okay, I think in the landmarks we in anatomy it has been taught in detail. Then subclavian we have the brachial artery. Okay, axillary we don't feel. Go for the brachial artery, which is felt against the tendon of biceps. Then from there you have the radial artery and you have the ulnar artery. Okay, then you go towards the lower extremity, it comes the femoral artery. Femoral artery usually we don't expect because it requires exposure. So you are excused, but you should know where is the location of the femoral artery. Okay. Then comes the popliteal artery. Now popliteal artery lies deep within the popliteal fossa. So you have to flex your knee, not your knee, the patient, the subject's knee at 45 degrees, and then put your hands inside and try to feel for the pulsations. After popliteal artery, you have the posterior tibial artery. Okay, the posterior tibial artery and dorsalis pedis. Dorsalis pedis is one of the favorite question of the examiner. So please learn to palpate dorsalis pedis artery. Okay, so evaluation of the peripheral arteries is important in case of peripheral vascular disease and especially if the person is complaining of intermittent claudication. Now, what is intermittent claudication? For example, if a person is having atherosclerosis, so what is going to happen? The blood flow to the structures would be reduced. For example, you consider muscles over here. So once a person starts walking, means there is some activity going inside the muscle. So technically the demand, the nutritional demand would increase in that muscle. But the level of blood flow is not increasing to that level. So what is going to happen? There is a state of transient ischemia, which would cause pain in the muscle. So what happens after a person walks for a particular distance, the pain would start in his muscles and he would sit down. So once he takes rest, the activity within the muscles reduce, metabolic demand reduces, so the pain will also reduce. Then again he starts walking. So this is a very classical example of intermittent claudication, which is present in peripheral vascular disease. So in such patient, assessment of peripheral arteries is very, very important. So this is how I conclude today's class. Please perform examination, clinical examination at home if possible, because pulse you can do it, it does not require any apparatus. Blood pressure, I agree, you need a sphygmomanometer. But if your parents, I mean, who are doctors, if they have BP apparatus at home, please try to practice, because tying the cuff itself is an art. Because unless and until you tie the cuff properly, it is not going to give you proper BP readings. So, and then when it comes to clinical examination, at least inspection, palpation, percussion, you can do in the on your siblings, especially if you have a younger brother or somebody, you can try to do all those things, because it is a practice which would really help you. Don't think that the university exam would be in a pattern which was conducted for the third internal assessment. It was a very typical university exam where you have to perform right in front of examiners. So please practice your clinical skills, utilize this time. Okay? Chalo, good luck and happy Navratri to all of you all. And happy Dasra.